So welcome back. It's good to have you here. It's very quiet today, very small, very cash. So
I just saw it.
yeah.
I'm not that far away. I'm just gonna go.
Good. I'm glad you came. We do have a little packet for you. I should have handed it to you when you came up. Yeah, no, I feel you. Thank you. All right, good. Do you need a pen or anything?
No, I've got it. No.
Wonderful. Right, so we are streaming this onto YouTube so that if we talk about anything and you're like, what did they say? You can go to the YouTube and check it out. But obviously you know where to find us. So
You're still in the same place.
I'm still in the same part of town, but also I'm still on all the same social media places. Yeah. Hello, welcome. Hi. Very well, thanks. Welcome. Come on in.
I think I might do the clip.
You may have the clipping.
Hi.
Oh my goodness! Look at all these happy faces. Hello. So good to see you. Come in. We do have a little. We're so organized because of Captain Azar that we actually have a packet for all of you. You can come and take your packet. If you don't have a pen, we might have spare pens. There's no grade though, so you're not actually required. I mean, you can have an A+. Yes. Hello.
Hi.
I'm sorry, what?
I didn't get many of those before.
Oh, A+. You get an A just for showing up with a good attitude. So
Yeah, I was also a solid BC student. No, I would funny how that happens. I would actually do so many activities and stuff that I would not have time to do my studies because I was too busy doing other things. Funny. I mean, it's great when you grow out of that and when you become an adult.
what? Yeah, you're so moderated.
No, that's the irony that I still do that I still have too many things that I'm doing.
Oh my gosh. So all of us here are people who like to do things, and I'm so happy to see you and to be here with my bestie, my chum, Captain Azar. Hello, my darling. I'm Madame Askew. I think most of you know who I am because you found us, so you kind of had to know about us already. So thank you for being here. We are recording the workshop today, so if we say anything really deeply fascinating, you're like, what was that? You can go back and review, so you don't have to take a lot of notes. Bonus, no necessary note-taking unless you really want to take notes. And you already got an A for showing up with a good attitude. So we're going to be talking about building your steampunk persona, but this really applies to building any kind of persona for doing steampunk or going to conventions or doing LARPs, or just because you're like, I really want to inhabit this space on a stage for a fashion show or something. I don't know if you're doing Iron Tailor and you're masquerading as a secret table and it's genius, you may want to like develop your secret table character. I don't know your life, but maybe I know your life this much. So this is kind of an attempt to have what I would call an organized approach, but you do not have to start at any one point. So one of the things I think is very critical to this approach is you can see the little gear on the front and everything kind of connects. That's because you can enter in to your character creation point at any particular point in the wheel. Sometimes some friends give you a nickname and then you're like, well, how do I inhabit that nickname? I'm not sure how I feel about it. But then you decide to embrace the name and you fill in the details to go around the name. Sometimes you have like, I don't know, an idea of the background. You have a feeling of, of what kind of character this is supposed to be. They're an engineer. They're a cheeky rogue in a pretty floral bonnet. I don't know. There are lots of things. They could be the little nugget, the little story kernel that is like the heart of your character as a concept. Maybe you're like, listen, I don't know my name. I don't know what I do. I just know I want to be from France.
No, not the France part. You had me up into the France part, and then I'm like, no, but that was me in the beginning. I was like, I just know I want a thing, but I don't know what the thing is. And then you said France. I'm like, no, not France.
Well, no, not France. But maybe you want from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or an airship. Or maybe you're just like, I want to be with my chums, and they do a bunch of weird things with tea. And so maybe I'll take this weird things with tea idea and see where I can run with it. So, my darling friends, you know I will run away with this panel. Would you like to jump in a little bit?
No, you're doing great so far. I'm sure I'll jump in when there's like when we get to more into it. But
right,
yeah,
good.
You're good. You're doing great. Good job. A+.
So you can also plan versus allow things to develop organically. And to be honest, mine was organic. She just sort of started to form around a nickname. Also, this table,
I know.
wheels in my dramatic moment.
It made it even more dramatic because then you like slid forward.
Oh no, I'm about to go. So I had initially a very organic approach.
Helicopter. The building's trying to take off.
It's good. It's good. It's a very steampunk moment. So I'm also deeply distracting. So I started off a little bit organic, and then I honed in over the course of time with more premeditated details. But the Grand Arbiter, my normal performing partner, whom some of you have had the pleasure to meet, he came with a concept. He came with a roadmap. He came with a name. He was like, I'm ready. No one uses his character name. No one knows it except for him and me. And even he's like, that gag was not nearly as funny as I thought it was going to be. His first name is Ptolemy, like Ptolem, Ptolemy, because he's a time-traveling chaos agent descended from gods or something. I'm like, sure, sounds completely reasonable. So after a while, we were like, no one calls you Ptolemy. And all of my attempts to make gags about Ptolemy's petite time adventures, no one thought that was funny except for me. I thought it was genius at the time. So sometimes your very organized, premeditated plan may not stick. So it's also, I think, really good to have a little bit of flexibility.
I was kind of a hybrid.
Yeah,
I was kind of a hybrid. I had an idea, I had kind of a concept, couldn't come up with a name, and then it ended up being a gag. Because at one point, my entire family was part of the steampunk gaggle of shenanigans. And so then we started to be affectionately called Clan. My husband's last name is Azar. So it was Clan Azar. And then it turned into Clan Huzzah.
Huzzah!
Yeah, huzzah. And then my husband and I were just like, I say we just stick with that. We'll just do Azar. And I'm like, cool. So ours was kind of a hybrid. We didn't have the name, but we had the general concept. And for him, it was because he's a little flighty and he's really nerdy. He speaks in constant movie quotes. And so we decided to do kind of like the nutty professor, kind of like that absent-minded professor that's really genuinely good-hearted, but don't ever, you're never going to see your grades to your tests because they never get, graded. You just get A's. And
I relate to that very hard.
Yeah, that's why we kind of went with his. So his was also kind of like a weird hybrid.
Yeah, I love that. And also it's really stuck, which is also, I think, a feature of being in persona and doing a character and being able to inhabit a persona that maybe you weren't born with at events is to find something that's comfortable to inhabit. So it can be an opportunity for a short form thing to push yourself outside of your comfort box. Let's say you are very introverted and you want to give it a whirl with being an extrovert. Or let's say you're usually you like to blend into the background, but you'd like to try taking charge. Those are sort of extreme examples, but I feel like finding something that challenges you like that can be really fun, but not necessarily for 18 hours a day. So think about is this something I'm going to do for an hour, a weekend, a day? Am I doing it for a LARP? Am I doing it for a fashion show? Am I doing it for a day of convention time? Do I feel like I'll be comfortable in this persona? And keep a little bit of that personal comfort in mind, because the longer you want to roll with a character, the more time you need to inhabit it, the more comfortable it needs to be to put on. Now, to be honest, my persona is so comfortable at this point that I can just slip her on and off. And many people do not always know where one stops and the other starts. And sometimes people ask me if I know. I do. A very firm understanding of reality versus fantasy. But that's because there's a lot of overlap, and I've been performing the character for a long time. We will not try and cogitate on
many moons. And
Many-
also, you're a
many
time
times.
traveler, so
Yeah,
time
it's
is a concept. Time is not a concept.
It is not. So I like to encourage people to find something a little bit comfortable to hold on to. So let's get into some of these options a little bit. And we're going to start with a name. I like names, but you don't have to start with a name, but a name is a fun place to start. If you have nothing else to go on, if you're just sort of swimming through the ether, wondering how to create a steampunk persona, we love names in steampunk, and we love ridiculous names. Even serious steampunk fiction, such as it is. I think some of it is certainly, leans more literary than others. But in general, I don't find steampunk to be that kind of precious space. But things like Everfair and The Difference Engine, those are more serious steampunk books, and even those have these kind of convoluted, complicated names, especially when it comes to weird Europeans. That's always nice. Just throw a strange name at that weird European and you've got a whole vibe. But I have a secret weapon when I need to help myself out with names, and that is this really ridiculous book. It's called The Character Naming Source Book. It's by Sherilyn Kenyon. This is the second edition Electric Boogaloo, a little bit better researched, a little bit more diversity in regions. The original one is very Eurocentric. This one breaks out of that a bit. Do not think that this is deep research, however. Do not presume to use this for any sort of academic analysis of names. I highly do not recommend that. As a linguist, professionally, the research is dodgy. But in terms of coming up with some fun concepts and getting you thinking about characters, this is such a cool resource. It's also great for role-playing games. It breaks things down by nation and region and gender. Now, it is written at a time when we accepted the gender binary as a concept. And these days, I know we've become much more enlightened. So whilst this is broken down by male and female, I think you pick the one that resonates with you and remind yourself that gender is a construct anyway. So if you want to be Bob, be Bob. Lean into Bobness. So this is wonderful. If you want to take a look at it, I'll have it up front here and you can check it out. And hello, welcome. Hi, come on in. We've got some little pamphlets for you to help with the workshop today. Hey, it's wonderful to see you. Welcome, welcome. So I like this. This is a great resource. You can probably find it secondhand. Do know that if you look up Sherilyn Kenyon, you'll also discover that she's a romance author of great acclaim and has a lot of very spicy books out there. So make certain to include character naming source book if you are not looking for spicy books. So, but this is a wonderful little resource I love to have. I am a linguist by training, so I can get very nerdy about naming sometimes. This is a fun deep dive on last names. Last names are deeply unrepresented in the character naming sourcebook. This is great for first names, middle names, and like taking either of those, compounding them in fun ways and creating last names. This will give you an idea of how last names are generated and come to be, and how you can either lift a last name to match your character or create a last name to match your character. So this is the What's in a Surname by David McKee. So these are a couple of resources I recommend. I also like to take a tip from favorite author Gail Carriger and read all of the post titles on films and look for cool names from the people who produce the film, not the actors, like the best boy and the first script and the animators and all of the people who live in these different places where the films are edited, produced, and created, because you'll get like real combinations of real names, and they can be very juicy nuggets to start building a persona around. And sometimes they can kind of break you out of the box of thinking, you know, he has to be Sir Hufflepuff Wigginton. Like, okay, does he have to be Sir Hufflepuff Wigginton? Or could you choose something else? Or do you really need him to be Sir Hufflepuff Wigginton? I mean, listen, that's my gift to you. So, and the other thing about names is not only can they give you some biographical details, not only can they give you a sort of flavor that goes with your character, they can help your community remember you too. So one of the things I really lucked into, honestly, is that Madame Askew as a name is easy to remember. And it's also very easy to help people understand what it is, because I should just go, askew, like my hat. I'm not wearing one today, but normally my hat is askew on my head. So I could just like point to my head and be like, askew, like my hat. I really love being able to latch onto something easy. So if you are going to go with Sir Hufflepuff Wigginton, you need to make sure that you can remember it, first of all, but also consider, are other people going to be able to latch onto it? Is it poppy enough that they're going to remember you? Is it so convoluted that they have to remember because it's funny and ridiculous? Or they'll forevermore be like, I don't know, it started with an H and it ended with a ton, and there was like a bunch of stuff in between, and I cannot remember the rest of it. So look for something that fits your character vibe, that works for your geography, that feels and sounds good to you, and that you think can help people latch onto it. I noted here, I love going to census data. I do a lot of like taking the piss out of the English. So I'm normally looking at 19th century census data for the British Isles. Like, ooh, who died a lot that year? Oh, that's a good last name. A whole village passed. I'm sure something terrible happened, but I love that last name. So I'll go look for census data on Google, and that will also give me some ideas and some inspiration for names. So, Captain Azar.
I'm a retired IT analyst, so hard copy is great, but hard copy. There's a lot of really good websites, and like for D&D, character naming. There's one, the name always escapes me. I always have to bookmark it because it has such a weird, that literally you can go in, I need a fantasy name, like I need a fantasy fairy name. And you can go in and literally it'll generate like 10 names and be like, you like any of these? No, hit refresh, you'll find some more. So I like doing stuff like that. I'll look at like character sites. So I do a lot of online learning. And you're right that like ancestry.com, like a lot of those stuff, especially after, 50, 60 years, then all this stuff's kind of open to the public. You can find it online. That way you don't have to like go through microfiche. I don't even know if anyone remembers what microfiche is anyway.
I mean, who here is over 45? Yeah, we remember microfiche. Yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about, they're not tiny fish. But it was torturous, and you don't have to deal with it. So congratulations.
My kids thought it was a cable.
A cable?
You know, like a micro USB cable, yeah. They're like, oh, is that like a cable? And I'm like, how did I wrong you? How did I wrong you as a parent?
Everyone should be exposed to those things.
Right? Well, when technology fails us, you didn't need to know how to use the card catalog.
I will say that especially from a steampunk perspective, this is the kind of fun technology that you can latch onto a lot as part of your storytelling and your character. Let's say you wanted to be, I don't know, a steampunk librarian, and you're like, yes, I carry my microfiche in my hat. And you could absolutely set it up with some ingenious but kind of simple tech to create like a microfiche screen on your hat, and to be able to sort of twist through a few preset searches. So, or just put, card catalog drawer in your hat would be also very genius.
Awesome.
Not for me. I'm not a steampunk librarian. I just love them. So, but I also love this, going to the name generators and just going through some of those generations until you latch onto things. And I think also remember, you can take bits and pieces of a name and put them together in a portmanteau that just suits you. It's steampunk. It's as irreverent as you wish it to be, or as serious as you need it to be, right? So you're never obligated to use real historical names. It's not like historical recreation or the SCA where you need to document your name. No one will check. And you can also, this is my favorite part, you can give yourself any title you want.
Yeah.
So early on, when we were starting out the TSS, the Grand Arbiter, I get to abuse him a little bit today because he's not here.
He might be watching.
Sorry. He was much younger, all right, and he hadn't engaged with some of the things that I had as a time traveler. He was like, "Ooh, what if we have like a point system and you like rank up and then you can get titles?" And I was like, "Hear me out." No.
I love that. I love the enthusiasm. No.
I was like, that would be fun in a game system. But I've been in organizations where you have to earn titles through some mechanism, or you have to like give documentation for your name. And this is not to be shady towards those organizations, but there's a lot of organization that goes to doing something like that. And there's always a potentiality for people to use their in-group title to try and go on a power trip. And that's not the vibe. Like, steampunk is deeply made up. There isn't even a singular canon. So how can I say, like, Lord Muckety Muck is the Lord in all steampunk? I have to be like, so, like, which books, though? And was there a movie adaptation? And, like, which one are you using canon in? Because I'm over here in, like, the Parasol verse or something, or doing tea time. So I'm not certain you're Lord Muckety Muck in my corner of steampunk. So I didn't want to have this codified experience. I really love that as a feature of steampunk, you can be Lord Muckety Muck or mad scientist. Yeehaw! I don't know. We're in trouble. We're so in trouble. I've not had enough tea today. So sorry.
I actually like that.
Yeehaw! He's the mad scientist of the High Chaparral. Wait till you see those Mustangs. They are absolutely Tesla powered. Oh, welcome. So anyway, I encourage you to find a title that works for you. It can be representative of your family background or the job you want to have, or just a vibe. Like, I don't even have a first name. I'm just Madam. Everyone's like, what's your first name? And I'm like, never thought about it. Call me Madam.
Yeah, you get asked that a lot.
I do. And or if I'm being really cheeky, I'll tell people, we're not on first name basis.
Ooh, I like that.
Like, you want my given name? How scandalous. Next thing you'll want to see my elbows or something, right? So I have really great excuses for why I don't have a first name. The Grand Arbiter has a first name. No one uses it. So you don't even have to have like a full name. You can have whatever bits of a name serve you, your needs, and your character. And I love that. I love that. I really did hook in through the names. I have a lot of thoughts about naming and how that can be the genesis of the character. So, and I've got, you know, you did such a great job of formatting this. It's so beautiful. It's so professional. There's this great note. Do not forget, imagination is your best tool. And I think that's really true, especially in steampunk, but really in any kind of character persona building. If you're doing LARP, that's all about imagination. I love LARP. Like, I never get to do it properly with like the dice and the bags and the throwing and going out to the woods because I'm phobic of everything out into the woods. So I can never go there. But I appreciate people doing it and I cheer you on from afar. So what I tend to go from name is, you know, I expand from there. You can always move from other pieces to the name. So one of the next areas here is heritage and origin. Now, at the time we originally created this, almost a decade ago now, there were some things I don't believe I personally considered very fulsomely. And so I do want to encourage you to be very thoughtful and very respectful. If you are going to represent a character from a culture that's not your own, consider what that means. Are you appropriating or are you appreciating? Are you able to take from that culture and represent it in a thoughtful, kind, respectful fashion? Or, you know, like, listen, will it look like you are mocking that culture or that you're punching down? I highly recommend, discourage, not doing that. Do not be disrespectful. Don't punch down. Now, I say that, and there are plenty of English people who are probably like, hussy, what? They could take it. The English had an empire that spanned the globe, disenfranchised lots of people, was very murderous, rapacious, and bloodthirsty, and took advantage of scads of countries. I feel like they can take a little bit of tomfoolery. But if you're talking about a culture that's not your own, that your originating culture did oppress, that may be a bad vibe to like pretend to be from the oppressed culture, right? So proceed with thoughtfulness when you are looking at your heritage and origin for your character. That said, I was not born a time traveler, so I definitely took that on without asking anyone's permission. And my biological family of origin is probably horrified that I spend so much time amongst the English against whom they spent a lot of time fighting. So sorry, ancestors, I can't do your accent. So here I am.
You bring up a good point, though, that I think the common misconception with steampunk is that that the Victorian era only happened in Europe. So I think it's also one of those to be mindful of what was going on in other parts of the country during the Victorian rule. So, like, for instance, you have like I brought it up because I have ADHD and squirrel things fly away. Like, for instance, here in the U.S., right, we were going through a civil war. We went through the Civil War. There was a Mexican-American War. There was a lot of stuff going on here in the United States, and that maybe if you're doing like my character persona is an American. That's just my jam. Also, I'm horrible with accents. So that's why I'm like, no, we're just going to lean into the y'all and we'll be good. So I think you bring up a good point that you be mindful of that. Like, what else is going on during this time? You know, like, but then you can also lean into it, right? Like, if you're thinking that, like, okay, there was something going on in this area of the country, you could be a smuggler. You could be an airship captain that's like a smuggler, or helping out the revolution, and you're like a rebel. Can you tell that I'm really into Star Wars? Yeah. Like, I'm always about the rebels and the brown coats.
We love that combination.
So be mindful of that, like what was going on, and you can either work it to your advantage or just be mindful of it. It's one of the reasons why I personally don't lean too far into my own culture. Like, I just kind of don't do it, because you know, it's one of those that I'm full-blooded Mexican American, but it's one of those that my mother comes from Spanish origins, so my face can sometimes not quite look like. I don't look like my sister. My sister looks exactly like, you know, when you go to like the banderias and they have the Aztec warrior princess. It's like collapsed in the Aztec warriors, you know, with the beautiful olive skin tone and the dark hair. That's my sister to a T. And then here's Pasty over here. So it's like, so sometimes I also won't do that. Like, there's been plenty of times that I'd love to do like Pancho Villa and like the women that follow Pancho Villa, and they were warriors in their own right. The bandidas, like that would be like, oh my God, that would be so awesome to play. That would be like, but it's also one of those, like, I have to take into consideration that it's like, would I have to do too much explaining on that? So it's like, cool. So we'll just go with something easy. But long story short, too late. Somebody else got that reference.
Thank you for taking us there.
That's our point. That just to be mindful of that, because I think it's one of those that if you have a love of the culture, you have a love of what's going on, then sometimes you may love it to pieces, but it might be problematic for other people. And please, with all love in my heart, if someone tells you that they feel that something's problematic and that they kind of feel uncomfortable about it, please listen to them. Like, just listen to them. I'm not saying you have to be like, change everything, but just take that into consideration, be respectful of it. And if someone says that, we put this not safe for kids, right?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. Opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. So it doesn't mean that necessarily you have to take it like 100%. You have to change everything, but at least respect that, their opinion, and respect that, okay, they have an issue about it.
Listen and be discerning.
There you go.
Because sometimes people bring up concerns where you're like, thank you for bringing that concern up. And also, that's not really relevant to the conversation. I'm not appropriating rainbows. You can't do that. But thank you. And sometimes they're bringing up something that's very sensitive, very nuanced, and something where they've personally experienced some sort of, you know, bullying or harassment or what have you. Or trauma. And so it's good to just like be open to listening. I say this as I'm such a chatty Cathy, but like developing a willingness to listen and to consider that maybe you didn't hit the mark and be willing to adjust is a good place for learning and also to allow creativity to happen. So if something happens to be, you know, hurtful to someone, you can pivot in some fun, interesting ways. And I think that's an opportunity for developing a character rather than something that, oh, it's robbed me of something fun and cool I can do. No, you can do something cooler. You can do something more fun. You can develop this character in a way that's not hurtful. How awesome is that? Yeah.
Also, you bring up another good point. You don't have to stick to just one persona.
Yeah.
You can have several. Like we have several in our group that have different personas for whatever costuming they're wearing that day. I kind of still lean into the Captain Azar no matter what I'm wearing, but I also the character itself is like, she's an airship captain. So there were plenty of times she had to dress in men's clothing in order to kind of like blend in. So there's like times that I'm definitely wearing dandy clothing, and then there's times that I'm wearing a skirt. So it's kind of like it blends into the character. It makes sense. Or you could play with it for a while and you're like, yeah, I'm just not feeling the vibe on this. I thought it would be really cool, and I'm just like, I'm not liking it. You could come up with a totally different character. And then the next time you go to an event, you could be like, I'm not, what was it? Lord Weaselton over here. Lord Grace.
I think it was Lord Hufflepuff.
Yeah, I'm not that anymore. I'm, Tom the Baker or whatever. Like it could, like how I did that.
Yeah. Oh, that was good.
I'll be here all week. Try the veal. But I think that's right. If it doesn't work, if it doesn't vibe, if you're just not feeling it, or frankly, if it just feels like this should be fun, and if you feel like you're putting way too much work and effort to this and it's getting too heavy and it's just too much, throw it out the window and start again. I mean, that's the great thing. Like you said, there's no canon.
Yeah.
You don't have to document this for all eternity. No. It's not like the 501st where you have to put in your resume and you have to get the approval for your character. You could just be like, nah, bro, and stick it up the door and try with something else. Or you could have multiples. I mean, it's okay. You can be a schizophrenic cosplayer. You can have multiple personalities. It's cool. Do whatever you want.
Have a business card for each one.
Name tag. That way I know what to call you when I see you. Like, who is you today? Like,
maybe have a little gag where you're like, today they are wearing that brooch. It must be this character.
New character. Who this?
Right? So I think it can be fun to have multiple characters with multiple vibes if you can keep track of them. I'm a simple creature. That's not really true, but we'll pretend. And I had to narrow it down. And I spend too much time creating characters for other people, so I can only portray the one. And those other people are imaginary people who populate the temporal entourage. Like my imaginary butler, who, is just a figment of my imagination. But he's got a name, a backstory, everything, right?
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes you take those ideas and you turn them into the newsletter.
Yes.
The newspaper, stories. You can take those ideas and you can put them aside. Like, I like to write. So sometimes I'll come up with that concept or an idea and I'm like, ooh, that's really good. I'll write it down and tuck it away for later. And maybe I'll come back to it some other time and you might pull it out for something. So just because it didn't work, you might be able to use it in another instance. Maybe they become your arch nemesis. You really didn't like that character, that personality. You didn't like that vibe. So you're like, now they're my arch nemesis.
Listen, I feel that there's a real underrepresentation in steampunk at conventions of arch nemesi. I need more. I need more people to be like, aha, my arch nemesis is Lord Hufflepuff Wigington, and he has destroyed me with his snickerdoodle market schemes. He cornered the cinnamon trade.
No, that was the thing. There was no cinnamon in those snickerdoodles. That was the con. No snickerdoodle. There was no cinnamon there.
As you can see, we lean into more of the comic elements of steampunk. I really like the sort of camp and the ridiculous. You're not required to follow that flavor, though. You can craft your own kind of vibe. That is the fun. So one of the questions, because there are lots of bullet points with each of these sections to kind of give you some guidelines, some suggestions. This is not exhausted. This is not the end all be all. It's a starting point. But one of the things I like here is, does your character embrace their heritage and origin, or do they rebel against it or hide it? Because we know historically people would hide things about their place of origin. Maybe they felt they needed to pass in some way. Maybe they were a secret agent. Maybe they were cornering the snickerdoodle market and just making sugar cookies instead and lying to all of us. This is a source of interesting character development. Why do you represent your culture publicly, or why do you hide elements of it? Why do you uplift? Why do you maybe downplay? And that can also help flesh out sort of 360 character. I will say that this approach is very much to try and make a very wholesome, connected three-dimensional character rather than something pretty short and flat. You can just take a section of this and create a very short, not very deep character if you just need something for 10 minutes, right? You're going to be that secret agent table.
Rebel general princess,
Yeah,
in charge of a band of misfits,
right. That too, absolutely. Dressed as a table, though.
Dresses the table. Yes, dresses the table.
So really located to, your ethnic origin, your heritage is location. And the location can be where you grew up, where you live, where you work. I think it's good to have a few locations in your life for your character, because whilst in reality, there are many people who are born in a place, live in a place, work in a place, and never leave that place. We're steampunks. We're about adventure. An airship is waiting. Your character can go all over the place. It's fantasy land. Have fun with it.
Or doesn't
Travel.
have to be an airship.
Yes, that's true.
That's what I lean into, because we have plenty of airship captains.
It does not have to be
It
an
doesn't have
airship.
to be an airship.
It can be all sorts of things.
It can be, armored vehicles.
Oh, yes, it can be armored vehicles, Captain Azar.
I lean hard into that because my dad was a tanker for 30 years. So it's one of those that I grew up with tankers. I grew up with the Army. It's also why I leaned into like a more military character. But I was also an Air Force Junior ROTC and Air Force ROTC. So I definitely have a thing about airships, aeronautical engineering. So it's like, but for my character, it was like, we have plenty of wonderful, and I'm not digging on it, we have plenty of wonderful airship captains in the steampunk community. I just thought I'd go a different route with the airship.
Well, trains do not get enough love.
They don't.
They
They
do.
don't get enough love.
Listen, love the trains. The trains are lonely. And they have steam engines, canonically. How fun. Also, submarines. Come on.
Submarines.
Ah, listen.
10,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
What?
Come up. It's right. It's right there. It's
Captain Nemo would like some chums.
Thomas the steampunk engine. I mean, there you go.
Oh, Thomas, the steampunk engine.
My kid had an obsession with Thomas. He actually spoke with a British accent for like 4 years because he just kept watching that and Paddington, and it was one of those we're like, oh good, this is gonna be fun.
So good.
Is there any reason why he ended up doing cosplay and
No,
steampunk?
not at all. I love that he was obsessed with Paddington. I too had an obsession with
Paddington and
Paddington.
Thomas.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so good. But also like just paddle wheel steamboats. Like there's so many kinds of vessels you could captain or travel on, or create whole cloth out of your imagination. So I love David Lee Summers' Owl Riders series. Oh, David, I'm so sorry. I cannot remember the name of the overall name of the series, but it starts out with Owl Dance. And there are these little flying ornithopters that are shaped like owls that fly around by flapping their wings. They're great. They do lots of wonderful, terrible things. They take on many imperialists, and it's wonderful. Also, they're aliens. It's a very complicated series. Highly recommend it. Very delightful. He has airships, flying ornithopter things, submarines. He's got it all.
Got it all.
It's a great series. So think though about where you're located, where your character exists in the moment, where they came from, where they're going, And if they always stay in the same place, why? And if they're traveling, where they're coming from and where they're going to, and why? A good question to come back to is always, but why though? And push on that a little bit, because pushing on the why is a very fecund place to flesh out your character a little bit more. And, you know, locations can lead to different kinds of jobs too. We just talked of all sorts of different sorts of traveling vessels, but also you can do all sorts of different work depending on where you're at. So like in the 19th century, you don't have to only pull from the 19th century to be your inspiration, but steampunk is like really rooted in that 19th century sort of font of inspiration. But we have like the conflict breaking out between Japan and Russia. We've got all sorts of commercial ventures with the Dutch East India Company and import-export, trying to go around the horns and the tips and the capes of different continents. We have the development of the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal. We also have the gold rush happening. Like, that is skimming the surface of history. I'm a linguist, not a historian. So there's so much rich history to sort of like pick from, and that can take you to all of these different parts of the globe and also lead you to different kinds of jobs. Like, where are our prospectors and miners at? Where are all the people who are like, I hear there's like a seam of unobtainium and I need it so that I can help fuel those weird airships. Like, it doesn't even have to be gold. It can be anything.
Or it doesn't have to be on this planet.
That's true.
Doesn't have to be on the planet.
No.
It could be, you could end up with like time travel and like, you know, different alternate universes. I mean, the sky's the limit. You could, you know, mix genres,
Yes.
you know, so yeah.
Well, Treasure Planet, great. It's immediately I went there. But you can also go with what's his face, Burroughs and the Princess of Mars and that whole series. Read with a lot of caveats, okay? Because it is racist AF and like deeply problematic. But also it is a thing of its time. So does not mean that it's not valuable, just means you may have to pause for a moment and go, oh, no, he wrote that. Okay. But there's clearly this kind of interest in interstellar, extraterrestrial adventures, and Treasure Planet is just a fantastic example of that. We don't understand why they can be on tall-masted ships with no bubble, going out into the vacuum of space, and they don't explode and they still breathe. Don't ask, except it's steampunk. We don't investigate the science that deeply. But you have everybody on that ship. You have the bosun, you have, you know, the lieutenant and the pilot and the captain and the cook. Right? And like all of the guys. And so you can be any of those roles. There are a myriad of jobs just when you start picking on one little area of travel or one little place you might want to be. And that's just with transit. There's so many things that you could pull on, from the weaving trade to, if you're going with weavers, why not Luddites? They were union organizers and they get a real bad rap, but like history can be very rich in like occupations and backgrounds to help you develop your character. So I do like going to the history for a little bit of inspiration, but not being circumscribed by the historical record. Would you like to add to that, Captain Azar? I went on a real journey there.
I just was thinking when you said the whole thing about you could be a cook on a ship, it just went to Muppet Treasure Island.
Yeah, where are Muppets at?
No, but I was thinking that like he was pretending to be a cook, but it was Long John Silver, wasn't it? Yeah, he was Long John Silver.
Yeah.
So it was like you
Same
could
on-
also do that. You could be, you know, I don't know why I'm on a trip today. The whole like, you know, you're secretly, you know.
I mean, why
Maybe
not?
you're trying to, you know, escape
from an evil, oppressive government, and you're on your ship so you can find freedom.
This is the joy of
You
steampunk,
choose to
right?
be on a ship. But yeah, like you can kind of blend them in. And also, like I'll mention this today. Like I have a whole background on my character. Ask me if anyone knows it. This is probably the first time I've actually mentioned half of my character is in this thing. So it's like, even if it's just in your head, if that's like, what's my motivation? What is the why? And why am I doing that? You can keep it all in your head. You don't necessarily have to like, but I think looking at this, coming up with it, doing the why, getting a better appreciation for who your character is, then I think makes it, it makes it your own. It's yours. And also having that different can also in certain instances, right? Like how would you react? How would your character react? What would your character do in this instance? What's their motivation? Are they chaotic good? Are they chaotic evil? How would they respond to something? I think having that in the back of your head for your persona helps, because then you have a better understanding of who that person is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it could be very much part of your like already personality. You're just maybe accentuating the personality, kind of like alcohol. Your personality's there. It's just alcohol either brings it out or makes it worse. But you could also do that. You can really play into it. Like you said, introvert.
Mm-hmm.
You can, if you're more introverted, you can try to be a more extroverted character. If you're more extroverted, you could try to be more introverted. That would be really hard, but yeah.
No. No.
Why don't you try being an introverted character? See how that would work.
I tried it once. It did not work out. It really derailed an entire improv class, and the theater professor was very distressed.
Did you make the theater professor cry?
She did take me aside to her office afterwards. She's like, do we need to have a talk? I was like, you said introverted, so I went with trauma. She's like, too much.
She's like, bro, chill. That's not what we want. That's not what I meant.
We were concerned. I was like, well, I'm glad I sold it. Yeah. So, no, I can't really play personally.
And it goes back to, like you said, that this is a character that if you're going to continue with this character, are you going to be comfortable doing that? Are you going to be comfortable putting yourself out there if you're naturally an introvert? Are you going to be comfortable being a very brash, loud character if you're normally a quiet person? Are you going to be able to contain your, sense of frivolity and craziness if you're trying to be a more somber character? It could be cool. You could take a nap and
or you could be like Goth Daddy Emmerich from Dragon Age Veilguard, and everyone thinks you're going to be a big goth and really serious, but actually you're kind of a weirdo who is really obsessed with your skeleton son. He's great. I love him. So
yeah, I know. I was like, oh, really? Tell me more.
You should play the game. I highly recommend it. So all of this kind of leads to some of the more personal things about your character, like your skills and talents. Those can develop out of your origin, your occupation, hobbies, or just what you personally, like to do, and so you dress a character around it. So if you're into leather working, maybe you lean into the leather creation aspect, and maybe you have like a big business in tanning, which is very smelly, but good on you, right? So you can kind of pull out of those things to develop the next step of your character. And whilst this sort of wheel of options, they do not all necessarily immediately flow into each other. You can kind of swap them out. There is this flow where one thing can inspire the next, and you can draw from it to fill out those questions. The big thing for me personally is to always be pushing a little bit on it with that, like, if so, then what? Okay, yes, and please, what is coming next from that? We do have a note here about motivation and accent. And one of the things I definitely want to talk about is accent.
Really?
Right, yeah, no, you're not obligated to do one, right? If you want to, go for it. But keep in mind that it should be something you feel comfortable doing for more than a minute at a time, because people are going to talk to you, and if you drop in and out, they're going to potentially be confused unless you have a story or a gag or a bit. Maybe you're Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde inspired, and so one character speaks with one accent and then the other personality speaks with another. That's very complicated, but you could do it.
Maybe you're a really bad spy, and
Yeah.
that's part of the gag is that you're trying to be this like James Bond international man of mystery, but you suck. So it's like you keep dropping out of accent, and you keep like, you know, you're more Austin Powers than James Bond. It could be a whole thing, and then you wouldn't have to maintain the accent because that was part of the character. They're just lousy at being a spy.
That's so clever. Like you could totally show up and
This
just have like so good, and just pull out different like accents out of your pocket and be like, okay, I'm doing this. You just cycle through in that sort of instance and do really bad accents. That's honestly, I
So as long as everyone knows what you're doing,
Yeah.
so that way again it goes back to the like you may insult somebody, you're like, no, it's the whole thing.
So think about that though. Before you commit to the bit, I always think it's a good idea to consider like the long-term consequences for yourself. Is this going to be a fun gag, or in a week are you going to be exhausted by it? And by the by, if you decide something doesn't work for you, it's yours. You can like go back to the drawing board. You're not committed unless someone's hired you to do that thing. And then you may question your life choices, and you may have to get through it anyway. But in general, this is all yours. So you can throw something out that you decide doesn't work for you. I love that I have those really noisy notifications turned on.
Oh, is that what that is?
It is. I'm so sorry.
But you bring up a good point, because it made me think of like the actress that played Bernadette in Big Bang Theory, where like she tried that high pitched voice, and so like it really or Jensen Ackles that was in Supernatural, so he did that really deep voice, and so he's like, oh, this would be a really cool thing, and then it's like 15 seasons later, it's like he kind of, you know, had to really baby his vocal cords because it was really taxing, as is like the actress that played Bernadette doing that high pitched nasally voice was very taxing on your vocal cords. So that's also something to kind of be mindful. If you're going to do this different accent and different vocal, you know, linguists, help me out. Different vocal idiosyncrasies.
Yes,
We'll go with idiosyncrasies. To just be mindful of that. Are you going to be able to do it for 12 hours at a con and without like, you know, not being able to speak for the next 4 days? So like take that into consideration.
Register.
Yeah. Thank you. I was like, it's a quirky word that you wouldn't. Yeah, there it is. Register.
We got there.
Yay! Yes. But yeah, to also keep that in mind. Like, are you going to be able to maintain it without injuring your vocal cords or giving yourself a headache?
Or just being hoarse at the end of the weekends, right?
You could be a pony, little horse. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me today.
We're all having a gay old time. It's good. So all of that wraps into, I think, one of the best parts of steampunk, which is the appearance, the look. A lot of us get into steampunk for the aesthetic. Either we see some steampunk art and we think, oh, that's cool, I want to do that. We read a book and we're really inspired by this kind of aesthetic that's presented in the book. Perhaps we've seen a film or a TV show. Those are a bit fewer and further between for steampunk, because we started out with books. We're very like literary based genre and fandom initially. We've branched out from there, but we still don't have a lot of like moving pictures. So there is a little bit of anime, there is a little bit of film, but it could be any number of things that pulled you in aesthetically from that visual aspect. So you can start your character journey on, I just want to look this way. I want to have this kind of costume. What does that kind of costume read as? Or if you've done all of this work to develop your name, your background, your career, your motivations, don't you want your clothes to kind of help tell that story? So when I'm talking about character development, I do one of two conversations. I do this where we go into the nitty gritty and go through like all the ways you can organically create a character, or I talk about how you tell a story with a costume. The reality is that's part A and part B of the same conversation. They go together because clothes tell you something about people. I mean, you all already had a sense of who I am when you came into this room, but then look at how I look. Like, I am not a serious person. This is not the look of a serious person. I'm clearly full of whimsy and nonsense. I'm wearing banjo-playing cats as earrings and a dirndl on a Saturday afternoon, and it's not even October. And I am wearing a black shirt with my dirndl, which means I'm clearly out of control.
Dirndl heresy.
So you may not know that about dirndls, but a thing I learned when I got into making dirndls is traditionally they're only worn with white shirts. And some people got very distressed with me that I was such a heretic. I put a black shirt with my dirndl. And I was like, I'm pretty sure the Germanic peoples who also engaged in generously a little bit of imperialism will be able to survive if I'm wearing a black shirt with my dirndl. That is going to be okay. But I love this idea that clearly my presentation is a little bit more radical. I'm not, representing a very traditional look of a dirndl. And so my costume gives you some like hints of my character. Not the whole story, but part of the story, even dressed down a little bit. But the more detail you can put in your costume, the more people can visually read you as your character. And this is something that's come up at several points during the presentation, like the, microfiche or card catalog in a hat kind of concept. Being a spy dressed as a table. I swear I will move on, but I'm so in love with this costume. We did an event at TusCon, and Teresa's group won handily by 1 point. It was actually really so tight. It was really 1 point. But Teresa's group, you dressed as a secret super spy, dressed as a table, because no one ever expects the table. Was really charming. So just to let you all in on the joke a little bit. But your costume can tell you a lot and can help share your story and be sort of like your ambassador to the world. So when you go to an event, it can be an icebreaker, it can be something for people to engage with. But also, let's say you come to one of our insouciant little events like compliment dueling. People are going to really latch onto that costume very hard. Sometimes it's all they know about you. So it's a roadmap to help people understand who you want to be in the space. Are you a mad inventor? Well, are you wearing like a white lab coat? Do you have a slide rule on you? What elements are you bringing in to create this look? So.
When you were saying that, I was just thinking about Badger from Firefly, that like he was trying to put on air, so he's wearing a bowler hat. Nobody else is wearing bowler hats. He's trying to wear a tie, but he's wearing it rather like poorly. So that made me think of it, that sometimes you can also, your character can try to be pretending something they're not.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? That you can do that and mindfully be like, okay, well, my character's really this, but they're wearing this. And you can also play into that as well.
It's all in the way you present those elements and style them and put them together. I think it's really critical. And it's, I think, a really joyful part of the steampunk experience. That's just such a great example.
Yeah. Mark Shepard is just,
oh, he's too good.
But I think it's also like, let's say another way you could do it is, let's say you want to put some couple pieces as, like, let's say you really like Paisley, and Paisley isn't necessarily, straight up Victorian, but,
it's pretty Victorian.
It's pretty Victorian, but a lot of people would think 70s when they see it. You could also be like, I'm a time traveler, so maybe I'm wearing like, a really nice jacket with shoulder pads from the 80s, but it's like, you could be a time traveler. Maybe your character has done a lot of travels throughout the different countries, and so maybe you could have different things on your costuming that could portray that you're not necessarily. You could have different little tchotchkes and stuff that you have from your travels, so you could kind of blend that in as well.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a treasured brooch, and you're like, okay, that's going to be something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tie it all in, or you can actually start with your character. This happens to me a lot. Like I'll find a pair of shoes, and then my entire outfit will.
Oh, no.
The shoes will be the part. So maybe you have this. I love this waistcoat. It's my favorite waistcoat. Or I have this cane. I love my cane. And then now I'm going to create a character from that piece of costuming. And like you said, that sometimes it's organic, but sometimes you can start from the costuming, go into the character, or go from the character and go to the costuming. It doesn't necessarily mean that's why it's a full circle, but the arrows are facing both ways because you can really start and end wherever you may find out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes your hat is askew at an event and it sticks with you for your entire career. So
True story, bro.
true story, though. Absolutely true. So I think we have some time.
Yeah, we got a little
If
bit.
you have any questions or would like to share any thoughts about your character that you're developing, we are here to have that conversation. You'll also find in our handy dandy little handout that we've got a little form for you to fill in some notes about, your character thoughts. This is not enough space for most of us. It's just a starting point. I once wrote an 86-page background story for an RPG character, and my DM was very concerned about me. But I'm a completionist, what can I say? So this is not your 86-page version, but it's enough to be going on with and to get started with, and to give you some ideas of things to be thinking about as you're creating your character.
I'm just looking at this. This was like 2018, I think, when we put this on.
Yeah, I think so.
And I'm looking about what I put on here. I'm like, whoa, I was way off. I'm like, none of this. So I'm looking at it even now. Like now, this is all kind of like I stuck to some of it, but changed a lot of it. So again, goes back to you could come up with an idea, and I think this is kind of a nice jumping off point because then this is definitely, if you look at the motivation worksheet, it's why, but why,
But why though?
why?
So, but as we are going into that, thank you all for being here. It's so lovely to see everyone's faces. Some of you I've seen recently, some of you I haven't seen for a while, some of you I'm just meeting, but it's really lovely to have you here. Thank you.
And thank you for coming.
Yeah, we're trying to do more of these, so you'll probably see something in January, not December. We love ourselves and all of you. So, yeah. All right, any questions or comments, or would you like to share anything about your character? Don't make me call on you. Yes. Great choice.
Back in the ages when the dinosaurs
Mm.
roamed the street,
Yeah. Oh,
that you had a, not a SWAT meet, but a thing with, and people brought pieces of costumes
mhm.
and things like that. And so it occurred to me that if any of us have a character we no longer want to be, are you going to be having something like that we can bring things to?
Yeah, absolutely. That was kind of where that stemmed out of. That was kind of where that came out with, were pieces of costuming that no longer work for people like that. And we're like, and let's face it, you don't want to necessarily give to donation because, if it ends up at a Goodwill or Big Brothers Big Sisters, that thing's probably going to be, you'd prefer it to go to a costumer or a cosplayer. And that's kind of where it came out with. And we are definitely thinking about bringing that back. And I think you bring up a great point that it's like, if you do find out that you're like, for me, hoop skirts, not my thing. I did that one while WestCon. It was a bull in a china shop. I kept knocking into things. I'm already kind of a klutz naturally. So if you give me a big hoop skirt, it was disastrous. And then I was like, okay, taking the hoop skirts off the list.
You did look really cute, though.
but it was one of those, okay, not gonna work. And then so like you're right, you may find something, or maybe you're like, I'm gonna do all underbust corsets and I love it, and every single thing I wear is gonna be a corset, and then you wear it once and you're like, I hate this. But yeah, we are definitely planning on doing the steampunk swap meet soonish.
Maybe we were looking at potentially the summer. So I would love to say we get it in before Wild West Con, but I don't think we have the time and the schedule. It's amazing how fast the period between now and March goes as we are leading up to Wild West Con. It's like an inexorable march, if you will excuse the accidental pun, towards our steampunk adventures. And so I'll probably be summertime when it's hot and we don't want to be in costume. So we're more inclined to part with things. Yeah.
There's that. We're gonna try to bring back the the like excursions.
Yeah.
I know we did one like to the Desert Museum, the mini time machine, stuff like that. We're gonna hope to bring that back. And then those are also great times to like try out costuming and trying out your character in small intimate settings and see how it works and how it doesn't. But yeah, we're going to be bringing a lot of that back.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Great question. Yeah. Don't worry though. There will be a place for you to say goodbye to things that no longer serve you and potentially find some new things that you think are very charming treasures. Yeah. Any other questions?
What advice you got an old man who's thinking about getting into it?
Hello, sir. First of all, I'm going to challenge the concept that you're old. You are merely well seasoned, first of all. Secondly, steampunk is the perfect genre to get into if you're like, I'm not 17. Correct. Only one of us in this room might possibly be 17. And I...
He's 20,
Oh, there you go.
All right, great.
and he's the reason we're here.
Yeah.
But the more I learn, the more interesting it is.
So steampunk is really populated by such a wonderful wide range of ages, but lots of middle-aged folks find their way into steampunk. And part of that is because the genre has a lot of its origins in the late 70s and early 80s, and we were all young then. So, but additionally, because of the nature of being a sort of time travel, there isn't the same kind of like honing in on like younger people. So my suggestion is, what are you into now? Like what's your jam? Do you like trains? Are you into inventions? Are you an avid reader? What's your jam? What's your hobby?
Read motorcycles and teach history.
Oh, all right. So you sound like you're into mechanics, going fast, and like cool things from the past, right?
Sure.
So you could be a professor who like is mobile and has a steam-powered motorcycle. You could be an inventor of two-wheeled vehicles. Call them anything you want because it's steampunk. We can make stuff up. So you can take something that you're interested in now and massage it to like be the basis of your steampunk character.
They're also pretty big.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
There used to be a whole group of guys that got together and built these steampunk go-kart setups. They would drive around the conventions out there. So
Yeah.
they would drive around conventions. So
Yeah, that was
it was wild.
those were
Yeah.
wonderful. So Dave Lee out of Dave is maybe out of Alabama. He's amazing. Chief Hazards and the Towers up in the Astoria area of Oregon. They've all got great social media presence. But also, I'm going to make a plug. We do this weird thing called teapot racing, where we take teapots and we put them on RC-controlled chassis. And I say we, but I don't do it. I host it and judge it, which is the best. But we have like this little obstacle course you go through. And a lot of people who get into that are more into the invention and the mechanics and the nonsense. And a number of motorcycle folks are involved because they already have like really good hand-eye coordination. We can always tell too, because we're like, look at how they took that turn with their teapot through that, course, really precision turning. So there's definitely a place, but like to me, that's such an easy jump into like I'm a weird inventor territory. Yeah.
Also, like steampunk itself is very heavy into makers. You've got sewists, you've got folks who love doing 3D printing and armor modification. You've got
Bonesmiths.
yeah, you've got Strangeway who does chainmail, which I think is so awesome. He just does chainmail.
So
It's cool. So yeah, it's a huge maker community. So if you like making things, doing things, I guarantee you that's always a great starting off point. You go to a convention, you go somewhere and you're like, hey, I really like your Chatelaine. They're like, thanks, I made it myself. And then there you go, 30 minutes later, you have this great conversation. So it's also that too, that sometimes you can just go into leaning into your hobbies, your stuff. And the great thing is that men's clothing hasn't changed much in the past, 100 years. So you could take something very modern nowadays and then maybe put a cravat or something on it. The jingle bells. And you could just kind of modify it without putting too much time or money into coming up with a costume. Or, I mean, hey, steampunk is also kind of one of those things where you could show up in a t-shirt and people would be like, hey, cool.
Yes.
That's steampunk. Cool.
Yes. You also, all things aside, you are not obligated to have a persona or to have a character to participate.
I didn't have one for 8 years.
It's fun. It can add to your experience. It can be part of the fun, but it's not a requirement. You can really just be like, hey, I don't know your name, so pardon me. You just be like, hey, my name's Bob, and I like the color green, and I'm into gears. And people will be like, right on, Bob. Welcome to steampunk. It's completely legit.
Yeah.
What is your actual name, though?
Joe.
Joe. It's very nice to meet you. So I hope that gives you a sense of some places to start. Oh, it's good to see you again, Joe. Thank you. I'm happy you're here.
We came for him when he was 17.
Perfect.
Yeah, my kids are the opposite. We were already kind of into steampunk, and then my kids got into it. And then now I have one. My other two oldest are now kind of off doing their own thing, but I have my younger son who, and he kind of leans into more like the Wild West, like Red Dead Redemption, Wild West steampunk. So he kind of goes more into that with the holsters and stuff like that. So, and he used to be more dandy and kind of went to that, so it kind of modifies. But yeah, my kids were the opposite. Like we were into it and we're like dragging them along, and then they're like, no, we really like this. And then it turned into a family thing. So that could be kind of cool.
It was lovely. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
I have one comment.
Yeah.
The costume came together. I had sort of thought of a name, but the impetus that made me come out with the actual character and a backstory was I needed to write a bio for the fashion show that Hal and Diaz tell at WestCon every year. What in the heck am I going to say about my character? That was a really good jumping off point. I printed out all of my bios.
Oh, I love it. That's a great way of doing it.
But yeah, that really got it going. And I like to make people laugh. And so that's where all of this came from.
Oh, I love that.
Think about how would I introduce myself to a group of people at once that don't know me and don't know who I'm supposed to be. Write out a little paragraph and see if it fits.
And that's like a really excellent length to be shooting for. Don't start with the 86 pages necessarily. I mean, do if that's like your jam, but you don't have to. But having that little blurb for your fashion show, but also this bigger form can help you get to that little blurb. So if you're like, I don't know, I just like pretty clothes, and now this weird couple at this weird convention where I have fun, I like, you want to do the fashion show, you need a bio, and I don't know what to say about myself, you can turn to this kind of form to like help you hone in, or you can just write something out and be like, oh, this is who I want to be. Thank you. That is such a great thing to share. I really love that you brought that up. Wonderful.
Sorry, I'm just laughing because I'm thinking that, like you said, bios, and I'm like, I still haven't come up with one for the actual Tucson Steampunk page. Oh, you guys have these great ones, and mine's just blank. And I'm like, I'll get to it eventually, because that same thing. Like, it's like, what can I want to say about me? I do the things. I do all the things. And okay, now I got to make that into a legible, cohesive unit. So that's a really great starting point.
You can do it. I believe in you.
I do the things.
You do the things.
Send me a list of the things you do, I'll write them.
Oh, awesome. That's so good. Thank you.
I've been writing a bunch of ones for people for Wild West on panels this year.
Yeah, if I like,
I do buy it.
I got you.
oh, that's so what a kind thing to do for your chums.
Thank you. Yeah, I could do it professionally, and I could do it from like when we did costume college, and I could be like, oh, like this is what I've done, 25 years of sewing. But then it's like my character, I'm like, I don't know the things, stuff. And I like how I keep doing this, like I'm writing with a crayon. Like,
I mean, listen, sometimes you need to write in crayon because you get the rainbow experience, right? Rainbows. So I think we just have 10 minutes before we need to be out of the room. So if you have any last burning desires, we are here to answer them. We've talked around and about and mentioned Wild WestCon. You're in this room and you're into steampunk. This happens here in town in March. It is one of the biggest steampunk conventions in the world, not just the country, in the world. It's a wonderful good time. The theme is Halloween for this coming year, which is like very gothic goodness. Awesome. It's going to be so good. There's a QR code on the back, all of that.
what are these?
What
are these?
Those are my cards, Captain Azar. I too have cards, and they have my QR code on the back. We get up to a lot of virtual nonsense every month. We also do in-person things, clearly. But I host a monthly steampunk book club. So if you're getting into steampunk and you want to learn more about it, books are a great way to get into it. Free to attend. You don't even have to leave your living room. You just turn on your computer. Very easy.
We have a Discord.
We do have social media presence. I highly recommend joining the Discord, though, because there are no advertisements and no one's controlling the algorithm. You can just engage with what you want to engage with.
So many channels.
We do have
We have so many channels, and I highly recommend the QR code because the Tucson Steampunk was the kind of the OG, but this is kind of evolved into this more steampunk community. So we have a lot of different branches to that wonderful, wonderful rainbow tree.
Yes.
So I highly recommend like finding us on that, like the Discord. We got plenty of channels that stems into other things. You can really find like a lot of recommendations on costuming, on books, on movies, on food, lots of food. We're very food oriented.
We are very food. We love our tea. And we love
food.
Our tea nibbles.
And we have extras of these. So if you want to, like, you think someone you know might like want one of these for like LARP or something cool like that, please by all means.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and thanks for being here, everybody. This was great. Yeah. All right. Yes.
So I'm going for military turned mercenary. I thought
Oh, I like it.
What type of shirt wear underneath it and the pants that go along.
Oh, all right.
Ooh,
Like
yeah.
these are some great questions. So first of all, do you want to make your own or do you want to buy ready-made?
Whatever's the cheapest option.
Ready-made.
Probably ready-made, honestly. So first of all, there's this wonderful company up in Mesa called Wild West Mercantile, and they have a lot of historically inspired fashions for gentlemen and ladies and ladies, really for everybody, but they sort of break it across the gender divide. And they will have these fantastic shirts that are very reminiscent of 19th century shirts. Usually they have like a little band collar where you would put on a more formal collar. But as you are a mercenary, I feel like you would not be like super formal. You're not going to necessarily wear that, you know, very fancy starched collar. So a band collar is nice. And then usually 19th century trousers are like high-waisted. But things like blue jeans, That is straight out of the 19th century. So wear a pair of blue jeans with your trench coat and a nice button-down shirt with like a band collar and a vest. Oh, that will like give you a real look of being very 19th century. Add a pair of suspenders to that and you are like really cooking at this point. And then start throwing all kinds of like accessories at it. One thing I might do if I were going to portray a mercenary is I would start dressing up the trench coat. I would probably distress it a little bit, maybe with some fabric dye or paint, maybe with a cheese grater, maybe roll it around in the dirt. Like the cheese grater is a serious recommendation, by the way, because you can like run it over your fabric to distress it a little bit without having to roll around in gravel. So I prefer the cheese grater option. Yeah. And you, like, Zach, will you stand up so we can see your wonderful denim jacket here and all the ways in which you've added personality to it? Yes.
And you can also lean into the character. Like, why did your character become a mercenary? Like, were they dishonorably discharged from the military because they stood up for someone who, like, they stood up for something they thought was wrong? Like, were they thought they were doing the right thing, but they decided to leave the military? Did they retire honorably and they still have a lot of pride in being in the military, but now they're just a mercenary? Really into that could be like, because then, so if they still have like pride in the fact of military, you could use a military style shirt underneath that basically they're still kind of clinging to that. Or it could be like they were dishonorably discharged, the military did them wrong, so now they're a merc, and it's like, okay, so I don't want to have anything looking military, I just want to blend in with the crowd. And also, like, what type of jobs you take on. Like, if you need to blend in with people, what do you want to do for your outfit? If it doesn't really matter, if you want to make sure you're intimidating, then you can play that into the character. You can wear all black or something like that, and you can really play it into it. Like, what's the motivation for your merc? And then that's going to kind of go into that, because then, like, just by looking at you, they can be like, oh, okay, I see some, Corellian blood stripes, or I can see some, brown coat. And you can lean into that, or it can be like, there's no identification to it. You just look like this, you're blending in with the scenery. So you can kind of do that. And then you can go, I don't think there's any wrong way to go with the shirt. Also think about what's going to be comfortable for you. Like, if you're going to be in this all day, like my son did this, his Red Dead Redemption is all black. It's black shirt, black jacket, black holsters, black everything, black hat, and of course he wore it to Tucson Comic-Con, and it was like a gajillion degrees, and he really had a hard time. So kind of take that into consideration too. Are you going to be able to wear it all the time, or if there might be times where you might take off the coat, and what would you have underneath it? So kind of play into that. But yeah.
And I think thrifting is another wonderful way to go for this. So let's say you really want that band collar, but you don't want to buy a banded collar shirt. Although I brought up Wild West Mercantile because they do sales somewhat regularly. So
They have one right now, I think.
yeah,
Black
holiday
Friday.
site. So I recommend subscribing for their sales emails. But you can actually go find a nice button down at the thrift store, pay £3 for it, cut off the collar. Just cut it off. Just cut it off. No one's gonna. Oh no, you cut it off. No one's gonna care. Not really. This is not couture. We're not on Project Runway. We're in Project Steampunk Landia. You can like make it very rough and ready and just like cut off the fold over part of the collar. And then you've got the stand portion, and it can look a little bit broken in that way too. So same with the denim. As far as the high-waisted trousers, well, those are going to give you like a more 19th century look. That I don't know. I don't do gentleman's dress. I like to have a big tush and big tracts of land and lean into a high femme look. But for people who do gentleman's dress a lot at steampunk, I'd say it's 50-50 whether they're doing high-waisted trousers or normal modern-waisted trousers, and it really depends on your comfort level. But
Yeah, I like high waist. I like when most of mine I'll wear high waisted men's trousers because I just think they're more comfortable when you're on the con floor.
Yeah.
You don't have that kind of like digging into you. They're high waisted. Plus suspenders can also add a little bit of color or add a little bit of personality to it. And if you're using those type, then you can put them in. Yeah, so definitely that. And then shirts. I mean, I have 3 dress shirts and I have 3 suits. I have a black, a gray, and a blue. And then I have three shirts. And between that, I can make all kinds of different combinations of dandy outfits that I can wear to the convention and without a whole lot of thought process. I can just be like, okay, I'm going to wear this shirt, I'm wearing these things. Oh, I'm going to wear this waistcoat, put it together, put a cravat or a tie on, and then that ties it all in. And then boom, you're ready to rock and roll. So you can also kind of go from there and start it. Or wear like my son, wear the exact same outfit every time.
Yeah.
Every time. He even wears those pants to school.
I love
I have
that.
to buy him a new one. That's why I knew about the Wild West Mercantile, because like, okay, I need to buy you some new pants.
Yeah, now's the time. I hope that helps with some ideas. But this is also why it can be really lovely to join our Discord, because you can ask these kinds of questions in our Discord, and people will not only help you out with suggestions, but they may share links or share some tutorials and some tips and tricks as well. So recommend that. Yeah. All right. Great question. Thank you so much. Yeah. And I hope we'll see you at Wild West Con. Oh, well, let me say, young person, what's your name? Colton. Obviously, you want to be respectful of your parental figures in your life. But, you know, Wild West Con loves volunteers. And so if you're like, I don't know if I can do this, consider volunteering and getting to be part of the team and being part of the inside, as well as having some fun in between your shifts of volunteering.
Yeah.
Well,
sometimes
that's fair.
Sometimes you can do like a carpooling situation. You get to know people and you do carpooling. I know the first couple of times my mom would come and she just kind of people watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we actually do. There's actually quite a few steampunk contingents in Sierra Vista. There's quite a few people that are actually down there.
That's true.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few steampunks in Sierra Vista. We've done stuff down there, so yeah.
Yeah, but also I encourage all of you to come and participate, because if you're getting into steampunk, outside of the things we do, this is one of the best regional events, and it really is international. So people come from all over the country, and before the pandemic, all over the world. Since the pandemic, fewer international travelers are coming, but we still get some international people. So it's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. Any last burning questions? All right, my friends. Please follow along on all of our social media. Watch out for the next thing in January. Consider Wild West Con and join our Discord. That's like the best way to keep in track of what we're doing. So yeah. All right. Cheers. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I'm gonna wander off.
Yeah. Thanks. Also, this is